In today's video, we're going to talk about our Espar gasoline heater, why we chose this particular model, and do an overall product review. First of all, why did we choose an Espar gasoline heater? The main reason for us is we wanted to have a single fuel source. We wanted to use gasoline. Our van's gasoline, we want the heater to be gasoline. The diesel heaters that are out there, most specifically the inexpensive ones that are known as the Chinese diesel heaters, you can get those anywhere. They're a few $100s. You can get them on Amazon or eBay. They're super popular right now. But for us, having a second tank and a separate fuel source just was a non-starter. I didn't really want to deal with all that mess. Propex that runs on the propane tank is another option. For us, it wasn't going to work out because we removed the factory Westphalia propane tank. Ours was leaking out of the valve. It was kind of rusty, and we just didn't think it was something we wanted to keep long term. So we removed that and put the refillable 1-pound canisters in. So definitely couldn't run a Propex off of 1-pound canisters. That really just left the name brand type stuff, the Wabastos and the Espar heaters. And again, we wanted to stay with gasoline. We found an amazing deal on an OEM John Deere Gator heater, which is made by Espar, that goes in the John Deere Gator tractors. And these are new in box OEM units that were sold a few years ago. And we picked ours up for a steal. I think we got it for $450 shipped. Brand new in the box, never opened. The unit is the B1L. It's the same unit that was sold as the gasoline heater years ago. It had a few brackets that were specific to the John Deeres, but we didn't use those. The rest also is just like the regular heaters. And so for us, that was the best option. One of the downsides of the Webasto and Espar heaters is the price. They can be 5 or 6 times more expensive than the cheap Chinese diesel heaters. So keep that in mind. What we feel we're getting with that is a higher quality, more reliable parts sourcing, and something we can rely on when it is 20 degrees out and we want the heater to fire up. We chose to install our heater where the stock rear heater was in our van. We never used it anyway, and this seemed like a great spot that didn't take up any additional space. So we built this plywood box to protect the Espar heater from the rest of the stuff that we store back here under the seat. As you can see, we also have this tube that goes out the back, which we'll explain a bit more in a little bit. Our Espar heater came with a unique hood design that I haven't seen much before. It has a 3-inch outlet that we put on the kick panel in the front, but it also has another outlet that we used to put an insulated pipe that goes along behind the battery, up through the side panels, and then all the way out to the back. And then we have another outlet in the back that we can turn on and off and rotate that heats up this rear part of the van that tends to get a bit cold with the heat blowing in the front. Here's what that vent looks like. So it can open, close, and rotate. We can move it any direction we want. It's actually made by Webasto, which is nice. And it just fits in this panel, and this tube runs all along through there through insulation, so it stays nice and warm. We wanted the thermostat switch to be accessible from the bed, but at the same time, I didn't want to drill holes in the cabinets like a lot of people do. I think it's a great location for them, but I just have a hard time drilling holes in those stock cabinets. So I built this little metal enclosure box and mounted an on-off switch, so just in case it is not all the way off, which you don't need to have that, but I put it on. And then we put the rheostat switch up top so we can reach it from bed without having to get up at all. So this is where we tie it into our fuel source. It's the main hose that comes out of the tank. From there we went to a T-splitter and then down to an elbow and reducer. I couldn't find a T-splitter that went from this size fuel hose down to I think it's a 1/4-inch hose for this. So we went to something, I think it's maybe a 3/8 and then a 3/8 to 1/4-inch reducer here that goes in this elbow that then feeds the fuel pump. So this is what our system looks like underneath the van. So we have our fuel pump here. We have our exhaust that's wrapped in some silicone insulation. And then we have this metal pipe that then feeds the air intake that goes to the opposite side of the exhaust, which is very important. You may be wondering why the fuel pump is hanging from this weird contraption with zip ties. Well, this was our attempt to quiet the fuel pump down. These are notorious for ticking, and I am, let's say, particularly sensitive to repetitive noises, especially when I'm sleeping, and it was driving me crazy. And this method I found on YouTube, and it does seem to help much better than hard mounting it with that rubber bracket that it came with, but it has not fully eliminated it. So I'd love to hear any suggestions you may have to eliminate that noise. I tried boxing it in, insulating it. It didn't seem to help. So right now I'm just living with it. I do have a little spin in the fuel line, which I'm not sure you can see, that's supposed to help quiet it down to kind of reduce some of the pulsations. And that may have helped a little bit, but it's definitely better than it was, but not super quiet at this point. One important thing to note is you need to mount your fuel pump at a minimum of 15 degrees to keep the fuel going up. So I think ours is just slightly more than that, but not much. There's not a lot of rise from that gas tank up to where the heater's mounted. So we did our best to kind of get that around 15 degrees to keep it going. Our exhaust system routes this nice silicone insulation that came with our kit out to this aftermarket muffler that is starting to rust and fall apart. Our kit didn't come with a muffler at all, and it was a little bit loud in some situations. We picked up this cheap one off Amazon. It has quieted it down, but it's starting to rust and rattle, and we'll probably pick up a nicer unit before next winter. I've seen some people put their exhaust through that hole right there, which seems like a convenient place until you get a flat tire and your jack won't fit in there anymore. So leave that open and route your exhaust just under that side. Another important thing to note is you want to route your exhaust to the driver's side. You don't want that stinky exhaust dumping out right under your sliding door. So when you open it up, you're stepping into the exhaust and just kind of, funnels up around you. So take the time to route your exhaust near the driver's side rear wheel. Our air intake is right on the opposite side of the exhaust. It goes up and over past the cross member, and then maybe see it right up there, and has a little screen on the front to keep any rodents or other debris out of the intake. Now that we've shown you where we put our heater and how we installed it, let's take the van outside. We'll show you how it works. So we've turned the heater on, and you can see the current draw is pretty significant on the gasoline heaters. The spark plug that's in there versus the glow plug does take a significant more amount of current to start these gasoline heaters. But once it fires up, it only uses 2 or 3 amps per hour depending on the fan speed. It will drop down as low as about 1.5 amps if the fan's on low. You kind of hear the heater cycling right now. It's kicking on, sparking and sparking. We haven't ran the heater in a few weeks, maybe or more, so it sometimes takes a little bit longer the first time to get the fuel primed in the system. So they see how it dropped, and the fan speed starts to increase. So now the combustion is happening inside the heater right now. Right now the heater's on high and it's pulling 3.5 amps or so. Our lower vent here swivels as well. You can spin it different directions. All the way down, all the way back up. Which is nice depending if the bed is out or not. We kind of tend to point it off to this direction more to kind of blow up and around versus hitting just straight up to the bed. Let's check the temperature inside that vent. Depends on where we point it. If we do it on the actual heating element, it's pretty warm. In the plastic areas, it's still plenty warm to heat this little van up. This kind of gives you an idea of what the noise level is inside the van with the heater on high. We never keep it on high for very long because it gets pretty warm in here. If the top is up, We may keep it high for a bit longer because we tend to lose some heat that way. But when we're sleeping, it's typically on, you know, a lower setting, or we just turn it off because honestly, it just gets too warm in here at night. And again, if you run that fan on low, I can hear that ticking from the fuel pump and it drives me crazy. I'll try to pick that up on the camera here in a little bit as I turn the fan down to see if you guys can hear it as well. This is the amp draw with the fan on low. It's under 1, maybe on, you know, 0.7, 0.8 or so. We've turned the heater down to low right now, so you kind of hear the noise as well. It's at 1 out of the 4, and this is where we tend to keep it a lot while we're camping. We're sitting in the van hanging out, because it gets pretty warm in here pretty quick, especially if we turn that passenger seat around and you're facing the back. That heat just blows right. It's the warmest place to sit in the van is that turned around passenger seat. So at the lower level, you can barely hear it. I can't hear the fuel pump. I was hoping to pick that up on the camera, but I just can't. I can sometimes hear it if I put my head down there, but I can't pick it up on the camera. So it is something you may have to deal with, is that ticking of the fuel pump. And if you've got a great idea how to solve that, please let me know. Ours, again, is much better than it was, but I can still hear it sometimes. Hear the fuel pump ticking right there. Again, this is the setting of the fan is on low right now on number 1, and that's the noise I hear because my head is right above that fuel pump. There you go. That is our Espar heater. Let me tell you, it has changed the way we camp. We used to camp year round occasionally. We had that Mr. Heater buddy. It was okay, kind of dangerous. Didn't inspire a lot of confidence for us to go out in the middle of nowhere in the snow and camp. But this heater just changes all of that. It doesn't matter if it's cold and windy and raining, if it's snowing, if it's freezing. We just can jump in the van, go find a place to camp, and knowing we're going to be warm at night. I would highly recommend, if you want to camp year round and you want to get something that keeps you warm, look into getting a reliable heater. Again, the Chinese diesel heaters are fantastic for lots of people. They're really popular, but they do tend to have a little bit more failures. Just keep that in mind. Keep some spare parts on hand, or whatever you think you need to keep warm, just do it. Go camp in the winter. It's the best time to camp. No one's out there. The snow's on the ground a lot of places. It's just much more peaceful. So if you have any questions or comments about our heater system, please drop them down below and we'll get them addressed. We'll see you guys next time.